Is the Santorini volcano erupting soon? We're looking at some recent eruption trends of this Thera volcano in the Aegean Sea. It's called Nea Kameni in Greek. This is on volcano discovery. We start with the 1950 eruption of the Santorini volcano. It's known as the Minoan eruption of ancient times. This was around 1060 to 1500 BC, and many claim that it could have been the volcanic eruption that caused the parting of the Red Sea at the time of Moses and the tribes of Israel exodus from Egypt. The 1950 or Liatsikas eruption was a weak eruption but still stronger than most phases during the previous eruptions, which took place in 1925 to 28 and 1939 to 1941, and produced a small flat lava dome following a series of weak to moderate phreatic explosions that opened two vents in the locations of fissures that had developed during the previous eruptions. So the fissures from the previous were the ones that were used to have the lava flow. Now it followed 8.5 years after the previous eruption had ended with the formation of the Niki lava dome in 1941 and occurred very close to it. Georgalas suggested that the 1950 eruption represents the effusion of a rest amount of magma from the same chamber than the 1939-41 eruption, which was prevented from erupting then because the lavas had cooled too quickly and had temporarily blocked the vents. Until 8.5 years later, gas pressure was large enough to unblock the way, and when this happened, the same fractures were used as pathways. Now we know that the ancient Santorini explosion of 1600 BC was a VEI 7, and they said that it was about 100 cubic meters of lava that was exploded. To be a supervolcano, it has to be VEI 8 with 1,000 cubic meters of lava. Now, it's also the ancient volcanic eruption gave pre-warning signs, and it seemed that people had evacuated the island from the warning signs. Also, it gave a huge tsunami that had been estimated to be thousands of feet tall. You can see the video before this one, and that has that information in it. But we're talking about the recent eruptions and the trend of them, and could this be a sign of something happening quite soon? Now, precursors of the eruption, earthquakes were noted by the inhabitants on the island on December 15th, 1949, but let's go before that. We said it followed 8.5 years after the previous eruption that ended with the formation of Niki lava dome in 1941 and occurred very close to it. And we said the 8.5 years later, the gas pressure was large enough to unblock ways. When this happened, the same fractures were used as pathways. Earthquakes noted by inhabitants of the island, December 15, 1949, and the days preceding and during the eruption on December 10, 11, 13, and 16, 10, 11, 13, and 16 of January of the next year, 1950. At that time, there was no seismic monitoring, of course, so only quakes of magnitude significantly above 3 have been recorded, but there could have been many more small earthquakes. The eruption starts January 10, 1950. The first explosion took place at 1 hour and 00 on January 10th, 1950, that is at 1 o'clock in the morning, accompanied by weak noises and a felt quake. 11 other weak explosions could be observed until 8:35 in the morning. The activity originated from the eastern flank of the Georgios cone, about 175 meters away from its summit. Until noon, 7 more weak explosions and one stronger one were noted. The latter produced a loud noise and a dense column of sandy ash. Between 1:50 afternoon until 4:50 in the afternoon, 6 weak explosions took place with white-gray clouds and 3 larger explosions that erupted dark gray clouds of ash. Georgalas, who reports the events during this eruption, notes that the normally weak fumaroles in other parts of Nea Kameni suddenly were much more intense since the eruption started. Residents in Thera noted lightnings and small flares at night in the ash clouds as the ash clouds erupted from the eruption site. So they had lightnings, small flashes. The second day of the eruptions was 11th of January 1950. Explosions increased and occurred all day long. Most of them produced mainly steam clouds, the more violent ones gray ash plumes, some lasting up to 2 minutes. Lightnings were again visible at night. Between 1100 hours and 1500 hours, that's about 11 in the morning into 3 in the afternoon, Georgalas counted 17 eruptions. At night, the eruption intensified and a moderate quake, that is probably 3 to 4 magnitude, was felt by all inhabitants. 5 minutes later, a violent eruption occurred. Day 3 to 5 of the eruption, on January 12th, the eruption continues in the same way as the previous day. At the vent on the eastern flank of the Georgios cone, small to moderate explosions are near continuous. January 13, a light quake was felt by some in Thera. It was followed by a large explosion that produced a very large ash cloud from 11 in the morning to 3 p.m. 17 explosions occurred. 14th of January sees a slight increase in explosivity. Blue flames can be seen at night from Thera. Incandescent bombs are seen being ejected to 150 to 200 feet height and reaching about the same horizontal distance. Continuous steaming from the vent, and it's noted that this degassing is completely silent. 17 explosions counted between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. January 13 to 14th, a new vent opens up. A new vent seems to have opened during the night 13 to 14 January, fracturing the lavas from the 1941 rock lava dome and giving birth to the new Liatzikos lava dome, named so after a Greek geologist who had studied the previous eruptions. And January 15, paroxysmal eruption. At 4:30 in the morning, January 15, a powerful paroxysmal eruption occurred, producing an ash column of 3,000 feet in height and ejecting incandescent bombs up to 850 meters, that's over 2,000 feet in distance, easily visible from Thera. Georgalas counted 8 explosions between 12:35 and 13:55 hours. Some of them 8 explosions. Some of them produced gray ash clouds that reached 250 to 300 meters height and small ballistic projectiles. At night, incandescence was again visible from Thera. On January 16, a magnitude 3 earthquake is felt by some in Thera at 4 a.m. and is followed by strong explosions. 28 weak explosions were counted between 8:55 and 17:55 hours. It's noted that most of these explosions were steam and contained little ash, while some were gray and had a cauliflower shape, typical for weak phreatic activity, and were mixed with smaller and larger solid ejecta. Ballistic ejecta were reaching 150 to 200 meters in height and landing up to 200 meters away from the vent. Many of the ash explosions were preceded immediately by steam explosions. Georgalas called it partial explosions. Also, sulfur smell. That's the rotten egg smell. that's associated with volcanoes. Georgalas notes the smell of sulfur when he was on Nea Kameni under the plume. Between single explosions, there was complete silence and absence of activity. A low lava dome of viscous, blocky lava formed at the second vent southeast of the Yorgos cone, and it reached a longest diameter of 195 meters, the highest point 108 meters above sea level. It was described as looking like a shield of large angular blocks cut by numerous irregular fractures. Between these fractures, the explosions took place. The volume of lava erupted was very small. On the southern end, a weak flow from the bulky lava was observed, and at night incandescence within the cracks of this lava dome was visible from Thera. Fumaroles had appeared as well at the north side of the new lava dome. They were producing mostly steam, and some sulfur dioxide were found in up to 1,000 meters distance to the north. The temperatures measured at them was between 50 and 105 degrees Celsius. Remember that 100 degrees Celsius is boiling point for water. January 17 to 18, weak explosions. So you can see the eruption started on the 10th, and now we're at the 17th, 18th. There's a week of explosions taking place. 22 explosions were counted between 9:45 hours and 15:25 hours, January 17, and the smell of H2S, sulfuric acid, is noted, and in addition to SO2. The lava dome increased visibly in size. Small orange-red flames seen at night from Thera. January 18, 20 more explosions in 5 hours, between 7:45 to 12:45, clouds of 225 meters, 200 or up to 250 meters height, 4 weak explosions, 5 strong and 2 very strong explosions between 1640 hours and 2100 hours, with plumes reaching 300 meters in height, that's over 1,000 meters, about 1,000 feet, and ejecta reaching 100 meters high and 150 meters distance. January 19, 10 more explosions. And he gives here, again, strong, weak, and I'm not going to go through the details because there's so many. And then January 22nd, explosions becoming less frequent and weaker, producing clouds of steam and little ash reaching 50 to 80 meters in height. January 23rd to 31. Remember that this started exploding January 11. January 23rd to 31, eruptions wane, lesser eruptions than the previous days, and only weak steam plumes are observed. In a 3-hour interval on the 23rd January, only 2 weak explosions are observed. February 1st to 2nd, the eruption ends. 4 to 5 explosions occur on February 1st and 4 during the night of February 2nd. On February 2nd, all explosive and effusive activity stops. Observations on eruption. Georgalas writes about the explosive phase of the eruption, mainly during the first 4 days, that the comparison with the explosive phases of the previous eruptions at the Nautilus cone from 1928 and the Triton dome from 1939, you see there was about an 11-12 year difference there, is that there's this. A, the 1950 eruption, you can see again, it's about 11-12 years difference, exceeded the mentioned earlier eruptions, and B, its duration was longer than the 1939 eruption of the Triton lava dome. Note, this should be surprising, as commonly the 1950 eruption is described as a minor event in comparison, but the above is from eyewitness and of a trained observer. The comment on the effusive phase of the eruption by Georgalas. The gas pressure penetrated the overlying strata at 2 vent locations, opening the way, quote-unquote, for magma to erupt. Out of the 2 vents, the lower and second vent concentrated the gas pressure, and as a result, the earlier higher vent quickly fell into a solfataric stage. And due to the inclination of the ground and the small volume, the lava's erupted did not form a typical steep dome, but rather a flat, cake-like carpet, reaching only 9 to 13 meters in height, and its coalescence with the lava flow that descended into the valley between the Georges Cone in 1941, the Niki Dome, and partly climbed the western slope of the latter. Two small tongues of lava spread also from the north and south side of the new dome. The total surface area of the new lavas was 7,312 square meters. No summit depression at the crater was formed on top of the dome. Observations on the location of the vent. The site of the eruption was no coincidence, but tied to the volcano-tectonic situation in the area. It was located on a zone of weakness, faults cutting through the strata overlying the magma chamber. These existed already since the 1925 explosions of the Daphne craters and are related to the ferruginous hot sources commonly called Coquina or red waters that were abundant until 1925 in the bay of the same name, which was then buried by the 1925 lava flows, but continue today in many locations around the island. So you have hot spots, hot sources around the island even today. 4 groups of fissures had been created after the eruptions of 1925 and 39. One parallel, that is northeast-southwest direction, to the 1925 lava flows. 2 perpendicular to these flows from the explosion crater of Daphne until the Nautilus Dome. 3 diagonal in north-south direction. The extension of this fracture cuts through the 1866 to 1870 flow fields and the eastern part of the lava plateau below Georges Cone. These fractures developed during the activity between 1939 and 41, and they define the locations of the fumaroles on the eastern side of the Georges crater and the north end of the 1950 lava dome. 4. The fissures of Nautilus on the average east to southwest direction. The latter fissures were almost exactly pointing to the site of the new vents in 1950. This is the above is a summary and slightly commented translation of the original work by J.C. Gergalas, who visited the island during and after eruption and published a detailed account of the Bulletin of Volcanology in 1935. Now, according to Volcano Discovery, Santorini Volcano News, the earthquake swarmed southwest off the island. This is recorded January 13, 2019 by the University of Salonika. This is the earthquake signature of the swarm. Santorini's earthquake seen on the seismometer on Nea Kameni seismic station. An earthquake swarm has been occurring near the island since this morning. So far, 16 quakes of magnitude between 2 and 3.9. So you can understand how especially 3.9 is big. And at the depths ranging between 30 to 6 kilometers have been detected. The quakes are clustered about halfway between Santorini southwest end and the Christiana Island group. The strongest shock with magnitude 3.9 occurred at 10:27 local time and might have been felt weakly by residents of the southern part of the island Santorini. Although the quakes are near the Kameni line, a tectonic lineament southwest to northeast direction, which has been the preferred location for magma ascent. Hence, formation of volcanic vents. In the volcano's past few 100,000 years of history, there is currently no indication that the earthquakes are volcanic in origin. It is much more likely that they represent a normal tectonic event. But Santorini, being both a popular tourist destination and an active volcano, the situation merits close monitoring. Now, the Santorini Volcano Caldera Complex stratovolcano, 329 meters on Caldera rim, 128 meters top of most recent lava shield, Nea Kameni. The current status is normal to dormant. It's a 1 out of 5. Santorini has webcams and live data reports. And Santorini Volcano Eruption, we said 1613 BC, plus or minus 7 years, the so-called Minoan eruption, one of the largest Plinian eruptions during the past 10,000 years on Earth. Historic eruptions were 197 BC, 46 to 47 AD, 726 AD, 1570 to 1573 AD, 1707 to 1711 AD, 1866 to 1870 AD, 1925 to 1928, 1939 to 1941, 1950. Typical eruption style, dominantly explosive with effusive activity during intervals, powerful explosive so-called Plinian eruptions that appear every 10 to 30,000 years, construction of lava shields and minor to regularly spaced subplinian explosive activity during interval times. Latest earthquakes have been taking on place nearby. The Caldera stratovolcano, as we said, in the past 7 days, they've been around 1 magnitude. This is updated on today, Friday, May 31st. And this again is on volcano discovery. And now, as I said, there are areas that have the red rivers that they said. And also we have recent quakes around the Aegean Sea, which is daily, basically daily. It's a subduction zone, as we know. It's in the area of the 3 plates, the African plate, the Asian plate, and the European plate. And it sits right in between those 3 plates. It's a hot spot and has a magma plume underneath. So anything can go as far as the next eruptions. So we've seen that the past few years, the eruptions were quite frequent. And let me go back to that, yes. From 1925 to 1928, 1939, 1941, and 1950. Since 1950, we have not had an eruption. And before that, they were just basically every 150 years, just about. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.